Hi, good morning. Welcome to the second track. First, Fred Van Dijk will talk about how the Plone Foundation AI team manages its websites with CI/CD. Thank you, Fred.
Good morning, everybody. Am I audible? It's on? Okay. So, welcome. My name is Fred van Dijk. Introduction, but probably a lot of you know me already. I've been using Plone since 2002. Work this year, I started working part-time also for Kit Concept, so Kit Concept Zest. I've been working with a fantastic colleague for the last 15 years, I think, Maurits, which enabled me to do some cool things in the Plone community. Because we work together a lot with Maurits, with others. We're on the AI team. Maurits always says he's not on the AI team, but secretly he's on the CI team and he's release manager, so he has access to everything. And also on the marketing team, Classic UI team we started up this year. If you don't know, we have the Volto team in the community, but we're also now in the works this summer to start up the Classic UI team to also promote and have a kind of development for platform for Classic UI. And you might have seen me chatting with Philip regularly on YouTube, talking about Plone stuff with the Plone newsroom. So I wanted to do this technical talk. I'm going to make it easy on myself this year, just show some stuff around, but then I was like, oh no, wait, there's so much more behind this. So I'll do a kind of technical talk, training, show you a bit around the decisions we've made and where we've come from and also the journey. And I'll see how far we can get in these 40 minutes. No fancy sheets this time. I just started up Keynote and typed everything away, and I think the cats was the only picture you will see, and the logos. So that's good there. Goals. Like I said, I want to introduce you a little bit to CI/CD, but raise hands. Who hasn't done CI/CD yet? Who doesn't know what it is? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so that's cool. Then I didn't make the 10 sheets for nothing, but I'll still do it for everybody else also to tell a bit about the journey. Then I'll tell a bit about our organizational and technical challenges in the Plone Foundation. I'll do a bit of rallying again because me as the community needs you, because we need more people on several teams. And if there's time extra, I'll show some other material from AI team and other teams and config we do on GitHub and other systems. There have been quite a bit other related talks and trainings already at this PloneConf. You did know that all talks are recorded, so you can look stuff back, you can look live. People have been looking live. I've seen comments from Jens on Discord and other people like, oh, this talk, that talk, so everything is, but you can also immediately watch back talks. So that's a bit of a bummer to say it on Friday. You could have done this on Wednesday and Thursday as well. Some pointers here. Erico did a training installing Plone 6 this Tuesday. There were many people there. The full AI team was in the room as well. And basically what Erico showed was what Erico, me, and other people figured out for the last 12 to 18 months on this journey to get the Plone 6 to use Plone 6 on plone.org, implement it, and also deploy it. David did a very nice talk yesterday about Tales from a Production Plone cluster. That was about the deployment target. In the end, where do we deploy, how do we run the stuff? Jill did a very nice talk about Meta and robots for better developer experience. That's also intertwined to this. We're not using it yet, Jill, on plone.org. That's another story. But it does make the point of configuring stuff, automating stuff, having it there so that whenever somebody falls away, other people, and life happens, you don't have time or somebody else doesn't know, the config is there, and things keep running. Also, Timo will do a talk today, how we built the website for the German Aerospace Center, DLR. That's one of the clients where this actually started with, because we are, when Kit Concept was setting up the website automation CI/CD for DLR, we kind of used that work in progress also to deploy it and test it on the Plone Foundation cluster and setup. So these are all other talks that are mingled, that are about the same subject, so I can thank you all because I can skip some stuff, hopefully. So my personal journey in the AI team, I joined there somewhere 2019. I've always been a sysadmin. I knew my way around Plone setups, about server setups, Linux setups, but automation was not my strongest sport. I was really a newbie with Ansible. I think I'm still a newbie with Ansible. I've been team lead now for the AI team since 1.5, 2 years. And this CI/CD journey for me started somewhere around 2022. We had, like I said, Plone 6 was coming up really at the end of that year, with Volto as the new default advised front end. But Plone.org was still Plone 5, and in the community had this ambitious plan to have Plone.org running on Plone 6 Volto. And also we had this thing like, okay, deployment had been going in general in IT and with website, but also I think all most other applications to a container-based deployment story. And we have had a long history of supporting deployment in the Plone community with universal installers, with setups, with showing Ansible things. If you remember, Steve McMahon did a lot of work with Ansible templates for setting up servers. We've always been there to help hold people's hands to also get Plone deployed in ambitious server setups. But what we found with a shrinking community, with the focus on development, and also with the explosion of other ways to set up and people helping there, the container story was very new. I forgot when Docker was introduced, maybe 2012, 13, don't know. But then that took a few years to ripen. And I think for us, for the Plone community, what we see now is when we focus also on at least delivering and explaining, at least to people who want to deploy Plone, how you can do it with containers, then we can abstract and leave all the other explanations about how to deploy Plone to all the different systems to use containers. And that was also something like, I'm going to tell a bit more about it later. We talked about this in the AI team, Erico, Paul, Kim, and me. And Erico and me started working on this in autumn 2022. Like I said, it was based on existing code and work in process for DLR. And we kind of, there were Ansible scripts there was some setup there was already some knowledge with Docker Swarm. So we took that and yeah, we just built on the shoulders of the work that had already been done in the AI team by Sven, Paul, Erico, and previous Foundation sysadmins. And we continued with that. But our thing was like, okay, let's at least use containers. We were not sure about some other stuff. We Docker Swarm, Kubernetes, Nomad. Should we just stick with Ansible config management? Should we just do a container runtime and start the containers from Ansible, which is also possible. There are quite a bit of modules in Ansible that allow you to do this. And we weighed advantages and disadvantages, and we chose for Docker Swarm. And we also decided, look, it's already open. The Plone.org website configuration is open on Plone. Everybody can look at it. It might not be the most pretty one, because with every product, as you know, you start something, you have new insights, and you're working on the project, and then improvements get made to the templates, improvement gets made to the cookie cutter, you learn new things, and you have to adopt and update. So there are some improvements we've made to other Plone Foundation websites, but still Plone.org and PloneConf.org, especially for this year, have some really nice examples in their repositories on how we do CI/CD. And we made the resources, time available, people available thing. David already mentioned it yesterday. Docker Swarm is not the most sophisticated enterprise platform. I think nowadays Kubernetes is that. But Kubernetes has, and Kubernetes is also offered by a lot of commercial hosting providers and by cloud platforms like Google, AWS, I think even Linode now has but then it adds 2 or 3 other layers of complexity that you will also have to understand. So what we've done is also an example implementation as documentation. I'll hide from Steve for this, but still it's at least something in a base that we have that we can do. So procrastinating before I created this PloneConf doc. Am I 10? Yeah, I'm right on time. If I put some notes in there that I hope that I'll be. So if you can help me, if you see a time something there and it's way out of it, please shout me. So I was procrastinating, as always, to create these slides for the talk this week. And I found something interesting on Mastodon. Ooh, nice theory. Let's not work on my slides. The 200% knowledge problem. And this was coined by a guy on a conflict management camp in 2023 in Ghent, by the way, Maurits, at a high school there. They have really nice conferences on this. To successfully use an abstraction, you need to understand the problem the abstraction is trying to solve and also understand how the abstraction has solved the problem. And that's something when you go into, oh, I've got a site, installer, start up the SOAP process and Plone, make sure the port is open, maybe add an Apache or an Nginx in front of it, and we're done. I mean, that was like how we started this stuff 20 years ago. I remember I remember when I was still in my previous job, where we had a Windows machine, and I just started up the universal installer in Windows. You started it, and it was on a port, and we just used that. I mean, that was deploying Plone in 2004 and 2005. That's done. But then they started okay, but we need to do installation management, other things, and then you get the 200%. But another guy quoted this. He said, no, that's not true. Yes, you've got the 200% knowledge problem. You've got a 300% production problem, because you have to get it into production. And then you need to know about the application itself. You need to know about the deployment target and the deployment methodology. And each of these expertise layers is a full job of undertaking. And for the last sentence, if you're unlucky, you might read this and think, holy shit, no wonder I'm burned out. I mean, yes, we're doing this to ourselves, but yes, this also explains when you start automating things, you've got the abstraction, you've got the extra target, and my variation for today, we've got the 400% CI/CD stack problem. Because what do you need for CI? You need correct automatic repeatable setup of your software project. I mean, next slide, we are safe by that because we have that. You need a lot of tests, because otherwise if you can automatically install in this case a Plone website and get it up and running with nowadays a front end and a back end, but then you need to test if it actually is working, because otherwise you must just, in all the steps after that, you might get do faulty stuff. And before I continue, CI/CD, continuous integration. So setting up the project, do all kinds of tests on it and see if all those tests pass. That's the continuous integration part. CD, continuous deployment. There are variations of continuous deployment. The holy grail is when all tests succeed, automatically update your website in production. But I'd like to have a kind of switch there in between. So what do you need for continuous integration? Like I said, you need to have an automatic setup of your project. You need to have configured and up-to-date and adequate servers to run all those tests from the pre-source. You need to have a testing platform. The testing needs to be triggered automatically when code is modified, when a developer or system or anyone does something in your code. And then in the end, you need feedback flowing to the developers with the results. And like I said, we're safe by that. That's already there. That's not really my job anymore. Our projects now are cookie cutter Plone starter. It has already testing setup in there. It has other things in there. If you want to have it even better for dependency add-on products, install Plone Meta in those. We've got Ansible for the configuration management. Ansible is a language to not provision the server, but when the server is there, to configure all kinds of system settings, install extra system packages. And as a deployment target, we've got a container runtime platform, which is in our case Docker Swarm. And I mentioned, yeah, open source, GitHub. Is GitHub open source? Well, all the documentation is open. But we use GitHub as the orchestrator that combines all those things together and automatically starts triggering stuff when somebody commits something to a GitHub repository. It handles also the messaging, and it eventually also does the deployment. Because continuous deployment, only if your whole CI part is green, only if it succeeds, then we autonomously and automatically deploy the software project. What do you need? You need environments to deploy to. You need to, then when it's automatically deployed, you still need to maybe manually check and discuss this deployment on the testing environment with people, show the changes that have been made, and then you need to do exactly the same again and deploy it to production. And like I said, this 400% problem, what do you need in there? You need a CD orchestrator, the deployment target. We need to have servers there again, configuration management, security needs to be there. And like I said, like 20 years ago, we had on Windows, we had a universal installer. We started up, it was there. But nowadays, we need to have an Apache Nginx reverse proxy in front of it to do maybe SSL termination and other things, or we might use SSL also internally. The proxy cache, networking needs to be set up. And there's also this nasty little thing called data in the site. And you also need to manage also all of that. You need to have data, your data FS, your content database, flowing from production to testing. You might even want to have your developers a local copy of that data so they can, or a subset of it so they can test it. You need to have backup and restore. So I don't think I'm over exaggerating when I say, look, it's really 200, 300, 400% problem. And the only way this makes sense of building all this stuff and maintaining it is if you can then bring it back from 400% to 100% to specialize with people and get people again doing the things they're good at. Have the Plone front-end developers develop in the front-end directory of your project, have the back-end developers develop in the back-end, and me as a sysadmin on the AI team sit back, relax and enjoy and see everything working fully automatically in actions on GitHub. Ideal world. And then you can specialize again. But in the beginning for us, this journey was because I am a guy, I am in Dutch, I always joke, I'm an MVA, I'm a jack of all trades, so I like to know a bit about it all and do it all. But then, of course, in the long end, it's not sustainable if only a few people have to know everything, so you need to specialize again. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about Plone.org, but we also have PloneConf.org. And like I said, why do we do this in the end? It's a means to an end, and it's that the marketing people and others in the community can write content and we can publish about Plone. That's why you have a website for. So that was part one. Time 30, 35, 2 minutes. Fine. So what did we settle for and why? Like I said, we had some things to consider. We've settled for GitHub, GitHub Actions, and Docker Swarm. GitHub was already there quite a few years for our software version control. There was the mindshare of GitHub already there. We used to have our own SVN, Plone.org repository. Does anybody remembers CVS? I think I've seen it. I didn't use it. I was just an end user at the time. But I did see, and I think we still might have something of SVN somewhere stored. So yeah, GitHub is logged in, but it's still open and free for us. We get some sponsorship to have some advanced functions activated on GitHub. I did internally ask some people last year, like, look, this is still a commercial company, and we know what happens with commercial companies offering you sponsored and sponsored extra functions, because eventually it might take 4 years, it might take 8 years, it might take 12 years. Eventually, commercial companies need to earn money. We've talked about that with some people also this week, and they never earn enough money. So why not Kubernetes or GitLab? That was for us the sweet spot of complexity versus getting things deployed. Again, David talked about that. GitLab is more open sourcing on-premise. We discussed it as well. Internally, we hear that a lot of integrators and developers in their own companies or for their clients are using GitLab. So I'd really like to see some extra config there. Jill, I think Plone Meta is also. We're looking. That's still in there. That's also still on the road to get more GitLab things configured automatically as well. You can already configure every repository for GitLab. Then, of course, what we'll see a bit later, our workflows are now fully customized for GitHub, but GitLab would be nice. Of course, also, we already have Jenkins Plone.org. That's a whole different story. That's testing our software development part. What we do, the testing I'm talking now is for at least the Plone.org website is running most of it from GitHub Actions. So how does this work? We have a version of Cookie Cutter Plone Starter we used for the different sites at a different point in time. So Cookie Cutter Plone Starter gets improved. For Plone.org, we used a version somewhere last year. For PloneConf, this year's PloneConf, we had some improvements and we did some other tests there. Like I said, code stored on GitHub. And here's where I want to also demo a bit, because this is some stuff we challenge with. It's fine that you have GitHub. It's fine that you have a generic language as an orchestrator to do things, but then comes the design of it. What happens when somebody does something to a branch, what happens when somebody makes a pull request, what happens when things get merged, like I said, then how do we get it in a safe, in a predictable way on the testing environment or on a production environment? So what we do, we settled for a simple thing in the end, I think, is that we say, okay, whenever something is committed to a branch or main, we always run code analysis. We do the testing. The testing is run on runner machines provided by GitHub, which what I've heard from rumors are, and we are getting responses, which I heard is from old hardware from Azure, where they run a lot of the runners there. So it's not the super fastest stuff, but I think we don't notice. Things get reported and done in minutes, and also usually in parallel, as I'll point out. Then when you merge to main with things that were done in certain directories, we automatically deploy to testing. So we have here like halfway there. Whenever the tests are green and pass for whatever a developer did, either on the back end or the front end, we automatically deploy to testing. Then people can test, the developers, but also in this case, for example, people from the marketing team. They can go to the website, check if things still work. You can discuss this stuff. And then when somebody makes a tag release on the repository, everything is automatically deployed to live. There are many other implementations possible. I skip a bit there. I saw some very cool stuff, for example, where you have chat-based DevOps. So you just make a branch of some stuff while you're working. As soon as you make a pull request, you can just in GitHub comments say, CI, CD, can you please deploy this one to testing? And then you don't have the triggers anymore. The developers themselves are responsible for putting some messages there. And there's even some, and really that got me shivering. Deploy to live by just keeping the PR open. So you deploy to live by keeping the PR open. And then your failsafe is roll back to whatever is on the main. And when everything is working fine after a while, you merge the PR and your main becomes the new live thing. You've got Git flow. Like I said, we for this part, after a few months, we kept it simple, stupid. 10:40, no, still 2 minutes late. So demo time, let's roll around on GitHub, and I want you a bit to click around and let you see where the things are. I'm not going to explain things in details. I'm going to show a little bit of the stuff we wrestled with, the bugs we had. Last Tuesday with the training was really fun because I saw all those little mistakes we made and things we had to fix when Erico demoed and explained to everybody else the end result. But it was a fun, but also like, do we get there? Do we get there? Do we get there? So when I really start rambling there, please slow me, and that's for next. By the way, this is another first. It worked for 2 lightning talks, so I thought, why not use my iPad to do a full 40-minute presentation? So far, it just works. So the repository, Plone.org. This is the website configuration. We have a backend directory. We have a front-end directory. If you have done any trainings, this is the default way from cookie cutter Plone starter how we set things up. There's a separate DevOps folder that has some deployment and other information. And what we're interested in is GitHub workflows. This is where GitHub has its internal stuff. And this is where our workflows are. The first incarnation when we had this running was we only had two workflows here. We had backend and we had frontend. And that went to the beta. That was automatic deployment to the new beta Plone.org. But then, of course, came the discussion when we wanted to go live, like, okay, that's actually testing. And so actually, we didn't have testing for a while until I figured out, okay, let's do the automatic stuff to testing and have the deployment to live on the tag deploy. So that's when we renamed some things. Yeah. This is okay? Also in the back? Okay. So first thing what I said, what do we do? With every commit, we do, and this is GitHub language, this is the GitHub workflow actions. We have the name, we have the trigger here, so on push, whenever something is pushed here, we have a number of jobs, and jobs are here a number of things that get run in parallel. So that's the main thing here. These things can run in parallel on different machines at the same time, or they can depend on each other. So you have some statements here that you can say, okay, do these things in parallel, but one job depends on a few other jobs, and that is how you can make a kind of dependency chain. So we say, run this step on Ubuntu latest, the working directory. So this is front-end tests. What do? We always check out the code base. We use Node.js. We install packages, and we run lint. The same thing is happening in parallel, but then we run prettier, and we check if the developer has ran prettier, or actually if you use cookie cutter Plone starter, if somebody has done make format. We check if ITN was done, and you see these are all the same things. And so actually, and this is something that takes, maybe we should do a real training, real long training, and not me rambling a bit and showing some things here. This took us a lot of time to figure out, because there are some nitty-gritty details here about inserting variables here. Basically, these are kind of shell scripts where these variables are sometimes passed around in environment variables to the next step. They work a bit like build out, where you can say, this is the recipe, and these are the parameters. So there's a lot of similarity there, but there's some really nitty-gritty details about using, just like when you see React for the first time. I heard this year, to go through the training, 1 or 2 accolades that actually has some meaning here. Also something else, actions setup node is github.com actions setup node, if you start doing this stuff. So there's a load of actions that people and GitHub themselves have already made, but also other organizations. You'll see a bit later, Docker, for example, provides in their Docker repository some steps to some actions which you can use in your workflows to build your automation. And we also have some of those things ourselves. We'll continue. We're running some Black, we're running some Flake, which can be really fun if Flake and Black complain about each other and each corrects the other one, and then they start to pingle around, right, David? I think we still haven't solved that with a line length of 100 as soon as we do import statements on Python files. 120 lines. With the definition of correctly, yeah, we're still. So this is, but all these steps, if you see this, we have these checks there, they run, and here you see, for example, run check. This is one of our own. This is Plone code analysis. This is another thing like, can I compare this to Plone meta? No, but it still is something we have already like set up in the community and say, look, this is the default action runner to do some testing here. So it's a step that is already codified for Plone, and you can reuse that, and it works quite independently and tests all things. And then we have set pretty in the end. So this is all code analysis. So that step is then done. Let's see if we can get back. Then the 2 biggies, back-end testing. And here, it's a bit superfluous. I'll come back to that later, but we test everything. And then we have a new, did I already branch over it? Oh yeah, and you can do also nice things like this, where we say only continue with this testing, for example, if it's a branch. I'll also get back to that later. Here's the interesting stuff. So here we have events, here we have all the tests done, and here we start making the release. Like I said, it's container-based. So we build an image here, and we push it to the GitHub container registry. In this case, we had the testing, the backend testing workflow. So we build an image with some other fancy stuff. We use Docker Meta for some labels on there. We set up Docker build X. It logs in. And this is also an interesting part where each of these workflows from GitHub need to do something somewhere in the end, need to pass information to each other. And for every workflow that is run, it creates an ephemeral, temporary authentication token. And with this token, you can the workflow can log into GitHub Actions. It can get other GitHub repositories. It can store parts of your results from one job in a caching layer and retrieve it back later. So that's where this comes in. In the end, when everything is built correctly, we'll do the build and push. So now we use that GitHub token to push our image to the GitHub container registry. And in the end, if we did, and this is an interesting one, if we did run this workflow on the main branch, we deploy to our testing infrastructure, and there's a nice step here, an action that Git Concept wrote for customers when they started with here. Docker stack deploy. This step here logs in on our Docker Swarm cluster using SSH and issues some Docker commands to the Docker Swarm to actually have a stack file, which you see here, the stack file, that sets up how we that configures how the whole stack and some services in there are run. If you want to know the details about Docker Swarm again, look back at David's talk. I can very quickly show you here. This is Docker Compose, Docker Swarm stack file setup for how the whole service, and that's in the DevOps directory under stacks. And here's the testing one. And here you see again using services, you have the front-end servers, configuration here, labels for traffic. Again, if you are really interested in figuring this all out, training.plone.org, Plone deployment training. We had 8 years of instruction, 8 hours of 8 years. 8 hours, oh, that's not that dramatic. We had 8 hours of instruction on Tuesday from Erico, how this all makes sense. I'm just showing around where now where the stuff is. And then it's rinse and repeat for, I said I disabled this, right? Focus, do not disturb. I didn't turn it on. Sorry, Apple. So, and we rinse and repeat this for deployment. We have a little bit of a different trigger there. So we have deploy tag release live. And here you see on push on a tag. And then when the tag is created by somebody, either by doing it on Git or by manually doing it on GitHub, it's there. What's the nice part here? Actions. And here you see the whole flow of actions running. You can check things. Oh, Erico did something 3 weeks ago because there was something with foundation members. And if I dive in here, this is the front-end testing. You'll see the dependencies here. First test all the individual ones in parallel. When those are all done, then release. This one was blocked because it stopped because one of the tests failed there, so we don't continue. Let's see if we can have some other runners here of run actions. Oh, here, I did something a few days ago. And here you see something, okay, backend testing, everything was fine. We release and we deploy to the testing.plone.org environment. I don't have, I'm not sure if how much more I can show, but that's about the basics, how this all works. So let's continue and do some other stuff. If I did get lost here, the thing we had, our software development process of Plone has always been very open on GitHub. Here, as you see, we finally we push some stuff to GitHub container registries, and in the end, we push something to our deployment infrastructure. There's a lot of advanced secrets management in GitHub that eventually says we need to have an SSH key, for example, to log into our Docker Swarm cluster to actually deploy the stuff there. Normally, you can, if you want to work on a Plone package, after a while you've done some pull requests and you've come to a sprint, then you very quickly get access to our repositories and you can start committing code. And then we have Victor and Maurits and others on the different teams and our senior developers checking if everything is fine. So if somebody would want to do something bad, then we're open and we have some. But once you start doing CI/CD, we can't be that open anymore. So we've closed off a bit of the, for example, these repositories, because there's no an emergency brake or manual thing anymore, and everybody with the right experience or smarts could, for example, start updating those workflows, get through the secrets management of GitHub, echo a secure deployment key or an SSH key to somewhere else, and do something with that. So that's why we had to, in security, when we started looking at this beginning of this year, we had to close off some stuff. We also had an incident in spring where for the new Google Summer of Code, we were also with our development process a bit too open. Sorry, here, where we also said, look, if you start contributing to some stuff, you're starting with Plone. Normally in our process, you would go to a sprint, we would see you, we would help you with contributing, and if you didn't set the whole venue on fire, you could probably be trusted. Everything has moved online now, so also with our development access nowadays on GitHub, we have created a new level of teams where we say new people coming into the community, that's fine, but if you want to do your first contributions, please make a fork first, do a pull request from that fork, and once you've done 2 or 3, then we'll make you a developer and you can just make branches on the real repositories. That's something that we really can't do here with the Plone.org website. And the last thing we found there, GitHub is very cool. We got some sponsors from there, but we're not really there on enterprise. And for an organization the size of Plone, how many members do we have in the Plone organization on GitHub? More than 500. So we're quite a big enterprise there, but we would have to pay for that. So like I said, secrets management, I'll just skip that. I've got a few minutes left. I want to show some other stuff. There's some real advanced, no, I'll just show really quickly, really, I already showed you, I think, but I'll point to because this is interesting stuff. So in the workflows here at the end, you saw, for example, with back-end testing workflow at the end, there's stuff like this. And these are in the secrets variable, secrets namespace. And these are all managed by GitHub. And these are all also separated by environment, by this key. And those are all hidden if you look at the Plone.org repository in the settings. There are here environments. And here's the testing Plone.org environment that says I have, these are secret. Again, if you want to know the details, check out the training, check out all the talks. And these are the variables. And they get automatically inserted whenever we do a merge to main. The workflow runs from the backend testing. It uses the testing environment. And these variables get extra added to that action and get passed in and can be used to do the deployment. Like I said, the challenge is we have this new development model. GitHub always had it like do a fork, make a branch on your fork and do a pull request. In this case, things get, I'll just summarize, things get messy. And you have to really take that into account. So this is a journey that Eriko, me, Kim Paul and some others went through. I think we set this up, all of this I think was done in the last 2 years. The whole software development is still CI/CD'd, or actually CI'd on Jenkins-Plone.org, which again, thank you, Jill. You've been managing that. We've been managing that as well with help. I sneaked you into the AI team as a special embassy for all the testing infrastructure because you need the keys to the castle. And then again, David helps, Maurits helps, other senior developments help with our CI. That's still Jenkins. This stuff we figured out in the last 2 years. We're still not sure what we need to do about Jenkins-Plone.org, but for example, all of Volto is already fully running CI/CD. Also the software development part, also on GitHub. So yeah, we could use some help with this. If you're a sysadmin, if you're interested in this stuff, you've got some hours a month, please contact me because we could use some extra new people and helping hands on the AI team. And if not, I'll do my lightning talk right now from Thursday. But that was for the website team. So, as mentioned, Plone.org, we're kind of a staff team in the community now where we don't only do this for Plone.org, but we also do this for PloneConf. So this was already started last year where the organizers kind of half got support already from our infrastructure and they could start it. We really did to the next level this year where when Mikael and the Code Syntax team started and like, we need to have a website, we were like, okay, here's the repository. Go ahead. You're the Plone developers. Oh, but that's CI/CD. That's And then after 2 or 3 months, I think Mikael made some side remark to me like, we really like this CI/CD stuff you put up for us. Maybe we should also start looking into that ourselves for things. And that's here the thing. We can scale this. We have it on PloneConf. PloneDE was done in Beethoven with exactly the same setup. Erico has done the same thing for PloneGovBR last year. I still want to do this with Plone NL if I have every time. We can start doing this for country sites. And once you know the trick and everything is automated, you can scale. And that's so nice. And then, of course, you can scale and then manage all the different versions of the things you've learned and update the workflows. But still, this scales once you have it set up. There's some other things. Like I said, we use Cookie Cutter Plone Starter. We're on containers now. I'd love to have the developer experience better to also see how we are working with dev containers. If we can get that up and running, that's some nice thing. I mean, people have been pushing lists now in talks and in lightning talks about things they'd like to see done. For me, this is the important one. If we could get dev containers up and running and working good for newbies, then the original promise where Docker started 8 years ago, like, oh, please don't use this in production, but it's cool for assisting developers with a consistent environment. And then, of course, the whole sysadmin world ran away with it. So this is something that we should look into. I don't have time anymore. I think we have a break. Should I continue? Or do people want coffee? Vote with your feet. Everybody's still there. So very quickly, this is not about only Plone.org, but we also have the CI/CD now for training and for docs. So I'm also working with Steve and other people and the sysadmin team because they're also very interesting workflows. If you don't deploy a Plone site, but if you use what are we using again, Sphinx and other things to build stuff, we also have that also on the CI/CD now. Plone and Volto part is already also fully running on CI/CD from GitHub, where we again reuse parts of those workflows. We use the same constructs there, but then we're really into the development. And we are also nowadays providing official Plone backend and Plone front end. Did I write it? Yeah, Plone backend and Plone backend, Plone backend and Plone front end containers. And those are also now fully CI CD'd. Well, actually, the CI is still coming from Maurits and Victor doing the releases. But after that, we make a new branch on those 2 repositories. We change a few version numbers because, like, we trust Maurits, we trust Victor. That's been the ceiling part of the deliverables. And then CI/CD automatically pushes all those things to hub.docker.com to have Plone frontend and Plone backend containers available. There is still the thing here, also like these repositories are shut off for a large part because I think, David, you made a point of it last year. I think this is also an ongoing item here. So supply chain attacks, supply chain. This is still where we have to be. I think we have to look into. I won't say it's buggy now, but we really have to look a bit more on this, how we chain this and and improve. I mean, I think we could calculate things, have signatures. There's a lot of extra things we could add here as well. Then again, Plone, because I did eat your own dog food, the CI/CD, all those things, when we build the Plone frontend and the backend containers, those are using the Plone backend and Plone frontend containers that we generate for the core Plone releases. So everything starts to fit and hook into each other. I'm not really going to show you, or am I? Well, it's just, no, you just know where it is. Plone. And let's go get our coffee. But if you want to know, it's Plone frontend, it's Plone backend, and this is the examples of how we build the basic images. But again, for your own customer things in GitHub, there are here examples how we build those core Plone, those default Plone release images. And you can also use these, adapt these in your own integrator or customer workflows. Coffee. Thank you.